Shrine game is saved for the few.
The game is yours to play now.
The light provides.
This is Eventide Radio.
Hello and welcome back to Eventide Radio. This is a fan-made Destiny podcast where we have roundtable discussions about a variety of different topics concerning the popular video game franchise. At its core, the show is about having in-depth discussions about the game from a variety of different perspectives. I'm your host, Scotty, with me are co-hosts Rob and Robbie, and today we are continuing our discussion of Season of the Haunted. First thing we're going to talk about how the newly crowned Valis Forge has decided to break into the Destiny content vault to bring Rift back to us in Iron Banner. After that, we'll discuss how Ikora has decided to so rudely withhold a few new solar fragments that we've been recently allowed to mess with this week. And that's about it. We'll just talk Iron Banner and the new solar stuff and whatever else we get to. But before we get started, I wanted to let you guys know that next week we'll be doing a full episode breakdown / deep dive into the new Duality Dungeon, which I am very excited to share with you guys. In the meantime, let's chat. Rob, what have you been up to this week in Destiny?
Iron Banner and more Iron Banner.
I like it.
That's about it.
I like it. That's it? You've really just been grinding?
Yeah, I really wanted the title, so I got the title yesterday. So it's if I were to guess, I'm ashamed of it, but yeah, probably about 16 hours. I did it almost exclusively solo. I did play a little bit with my clan at the beginning, which we'll also talk about. Yeah, so and like last night I was streaming. Check us out at twitch.tv/Eventide Radio. And I finally started doing some of my pinnacles and actually doing the more of the Leviathan, like trying to get more of the weapon red bars and leveling up my reputation with that. So I finally did a bunch of other stuff last night, but almost exclusively been playing Iron Banner this whole week. I did do a raid at one point because my clan was like, hey, let's do a raid. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, probably 95% of my time has been Iron Banner this week.
Sweet. So I would assume you've been enjoying it, but we will get to that in a minute.
Yes, we'll talk about it.
You mentioned the Twitch channel, which is a great idea because I'm going to quickly plug the fact that we have socials. We were on Twitter, Instagram, etc., etc. We have an email. If you want to send us questions or whatever feedback, please send us stuff. We're always open to anything. But anyways, Robbie, what have you been up to this week in Destiny?
Bobbleheads. I'm kidding. I did go get the bobblehead, and it took me like 2 runs because I refused to look at a video. So went the first time through the whole thing, which is basically like 90% the same. I would like to say than the first week. Even though obviously we get like a new story change, and I don't know if you guys want to talk about Crow and what happened with him, but that first run took forever because I was going around like every nook and cranny of the whole place looking for this bobblehead, and luckily on the second run found it. Besides that, just honestly, I think the most time besides that I spent like on the new open area trying to farm a little bit of them new red border weapons. And just doing the event and going and opening my chests and stuff and trying to get some of them weapons, craftable weapons, which I still don't have, like not even a single one. But same with pinnacles. Like I feel like since it's like only 10 levels this season again, I'm not like in a rush, to get to the cap. And that's been good because I feel like, it's definitely a bit more relaxed. Even though I feel like there's a lot to do, it's a bit more relaxed season than the previous one that we had like all these new things to go around and do. Iron Banner I did play, but just a little bit. I don't know. I guess for me it's kind of weird. Like I like that you can craft the things finally because you have no idea how many hours I spent trying to get that sidearm with like headstone on it, and I still don't have it.
Right.
So hopefully this season I'll get it. But I don't know, just maybe the fact that I didn't have the quests. Like I played it with my Warlock, and I was getting destroyed. And I didn't play with the other characters, and yeah, I think it just didn't feel like a chore. Which in one side I didn't play it that much. On the other side, I think it's fine. I think it's good. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Cool. What compels you? Real quick question. What compels you to get the bobbleheads all the time? I'm not making fun of you. I just curious what what drives
that's
you.
funny. Oh, I think it's
What
just the
motivates you?
collectibles. I think it's the collectibles. I think that there's like an aspect of that I used to enjoy a lot in like older games growing up. You know, like collectathon kind of games,
Mm-hmm.
where you literally had to find all these little things. And I really love that Bungie does that. And I actually didn't expect to be collectibles this season, because usually it's not like a seasonal thing, right? Usually it's just like an expansion thing. So there were the penguins back in Beyond Light, and the cats in the Dreaming City, and things like that. The eggs, the corrupted eggs. Like I've always been like a sucker for finding all those things. And yeah, some of them were like super hard, like the eggs, right? There were so many of them, and I had to find guides to actually like complete that thing. But I mean, you know, one a week, and it actually forces you, which I think I mentioned that before. Like it really forces you to explore whatever area you are in, and you know, have like a closer look and at things. And you can always kind of expect like whereabouts they're gonna hide something. And I think that first week it was more, you know, expected, like where it was gonna be around what time during the mission. But this one just totally threw a loop. Like I wasn't expecting it to be where it was, and it was like a hard place to find it. And I think a lot of people don't do that ever, because again, maybe they didn't grow up with collectathons. Maybe it doesn't really make a lot of sense to a lot of people, because it's so easy, right? You go to YouTube and watch like a 2-minute guide, and there you go.
Right.
Get done with it. But that takes so much the fun away from it. So I don't know. I it might be a waste of time. Or it might sound like a waste of time in practice, but to me, it's like super fun. So
Cool. That's awesome. That's awesome. I'll probably dabble in it a little bit here and there for the very cool title, because I think it's required for the seal, right?
Oh yes.
yeah,
What is the title?
Reaper, I think.
Reaper. Yeah, it's like one of the coolest titles ever.
Yeah, that's why I want to get it, because it sounds badass.
Iron Lord.
Anyways.
I gotta say too, like that
Oh,
was
yeah.
sick.
That is pretty sick. All right, so our first topic of the day, a brand new PvP update. So not only did we get a new map, the Rift mode back from Destiny 1 in Iron Banner. So, Rob, I remember you being excited about Rift coming back.
Yes.
As a Destiny 1 fan. Would you entertain me and be so kind as to give us a little walkthrough of Rift in Destiny 2?
Yes.
Kind of how it works.
Yeah, for sure. So the primary objective is still relatively the same. A spark spawns in the middle of the map. It's kind of a rush to gain control of center, because the respawn timers are a little bit longer than a traditional, like, deathmatch style. Like, it is a much longer respawn timer than something like Clash or Control. And so if you basically, everyone kind of rushes to the center. Usually what I experienced was try to take out as many teammates as you of the enemy as you can, so you can grab the spark, which is sort of your bomb that you have to rush to the other side and dunk in their little spot. And once you do that, then you score a point and the round resets. The primary difference from D1 to D2 is that there are no points for slaying out or getting kills. You don't get points for stopping the runner. And so it is purely who dunks the most by the end of the 10-minute timer. It doesn't even display your kills at the end, which we can talk about a little bit later if that is an interesting point of conjecture or contention. But essentially, yeah, you want to grab the spark, dunk it in their rift before they stop you. If you get killed midway transportation, someone else can grab it. Either your team can continue to grab the spark and try to dunk it, or the other team can grab it and try to go for your rift. And then it kind of volleys back and forth. There is a little over a minute. It's like a minute 10 for a countdown timer. If you don't dunk it within that time, then you explode and the rift resets in the middle. And beyond that, it plays pretty similar to D1. The kind of the main outstanding thing, which I was jarred by the first couple rounds, but it totally made sense after kind of remembering some of the flaws that exist in Rift, is that when a round is over, the screen goes black and it restarts everyone at the home position. and then restarts the spark in the middle. And I've been seeing and hearing a lot of critiques of that it's like jarring and it takes you out of it. And I can see that for 6-man activity when normally like that's kind of reserved for like elimination and survival type game modes. But if you didn't play D1, then you never knew the pain of getting spawn trapped, where the enemy team would never try to actually grab the spark, because the spawns are fixed locations, because obviously like you have your side and the other team has their side, so they're not going to spawn you on the other side of the map, because the enemy's kind of collapsing on you. You will continue to spawn on your side, and the enemy will just continue to farm kills on you. And it is incredibly frustrating if you are playing against like a 6-stack who is just murdering you at the beginning. So that was a huge thing that they resolved with this in D2, where at the end of the round, everyone just starts over fresh and prevents that from being a huge point. They also added a thing that if you are getting collapsed on, because people will still do that. Like that happened a couple of times in matches that I was playing. You now spawn in the center, which is great because if that team gets tunnel vision and trying to just kill you at spawn, you can spawn in middle and grab the spark and then go and dunk it and punish them. And at the end of the day, you win if they do stuff like that. So it feels a little more like, hey, they reacted to some of those critiques in D1. But yeah, so that's Rift. It's a kind of traditional capture the flag, or like a bomb demolition is kind of where you grab something and dunk it on the enemy team.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So have you been enjoying this as someone who D1?
I was a huge Rift fan in D1. It's unfortunate because every once in a while, as if you guys follow our Twitch channel, every once in a while I will stream D1, and anytime that Rift is up, very, very rarely are people playing it. And so I have just sat in matchmaking for like minutes at a time and only found like 1 or 2 other people. So it's really bummed me out. I've wanted to play Rift for a very long time and haven't had the opportunity. So it's really nice to play Rift again. I think for the most part, the changes are good. There's a few things that I think they really need to touch upon, which we can talk about more. But it is nice to play Rift again. I'm happy overall with the bringing it back, and I feel like it's probably better than it was in D1. But it's also been a very, very long time since I've played it in D1, so it's hard for me to be like objective on that. But it is nice. It's nice to play Rift again.
That's interesting to hear, because I've heard a lot of people be upset about this, pretty vehemently so. But we'll get back to that in a second.
Yep.
Robbie, how have you been feeling Rift in the few matches that you've played, as someone who didn't play Rift in D1?
Well, yeah, I mean, I didn't really play Rift in D1, but the game mode is like pretty. I mean, it has its quirks and it's obviously Destiny version of, but like Rob said, we've had like bomb and we had one flag since the days of like Counter-Strike. So the game mode was like pretty easy to catch up on like kind of what was going on and try to play it. I guess my issue was also like I was kind of like alone, so you don't know what's best. Like try to slay, try to play objective, which is always the issue, right? Because a lot of people are just gonna try to slay on their own.
Right.
And there's gonna be like the few that are just committed to running the objective, and even though they die like 20 times in a row trying to do so. But then with those long respawn timers, it didn't really feel like the play, right? Like you couldn't really push that way, kind of like brute force it, because the game doesn't really allow you to do it. And so to a point, it just felt safer to kind of like try to. Like if you get like an advantage, it would make more sense to kind of protect the area,
Right.
If that makes any sense. Just like if just go to a stalemate with it and keep your win. But obviously, that doesn't happen a lot. I've seen it happen in like maybe 1 or 2 games that I played, because I didn't play that many, and so that it became literally just like a stalemate, or like people just killing each other and not a lot going on with the objective. And maybe that's why, but like I also heard a lot of like negative comments and a lot of content on YouTube and on Twitter especially, like, and I didn't get why because I was like, okay, well, yeah, maybe this is not the game mode for you, right?
Right.
But it's also not as bad as they make it sound. So at least from my perspective, it was all right. Like it wasn't anything like life changing. I wasn't super excited about it, but it was all right. It wasn't that bad.
Okay, cool. So you guys are you guys both enjoy it at least. Rob, have you had a chance to see some of the backlash to the mode?
Yeah. So here's the thing: is the first half of the week, it was severely bugged in a lot of different ways. As far as I know, the game itself still has a few kind of buggy matches. I think even when I was playing yesterday, I had one or two rounds where so some of the big ones is I think how it triggers is if someone grabs a spark and then immediately gets killed, the spark will just disappear, and then it just doesn't come back, and so you're just running out the clock if you want the reputation. I also had it once where it was there and it was showing, but no one could pick it up. Like just the actual like hold square to pick up spark just didn't appear, and so that also ran out the clock. Um, so and then there was a huge major bug to the reputation gains the first half of the week where if you completed too many challenges, because there's a bunch of ways to increase your reputation. If you wear a bunch of Iron Banner gear, if you wear an emblem, which I really really like, and we'll talk about kind of the reputation system later. And then also if you complete more challenges, which effectively was just completing matches with a certain subclass type in each character, you would increase your reputation so that you could eventually get about 300 reputation for Iron Banner per match if you won. If you lost, it was something like 250 or something like that. But if you went over a certain threshold in number of challenges completed, so if you're part of to get the titles, you have to do all 12 challenges, which is 4 per character. So if you did more than 4, it would bug out, and then your reputation was locked at the lowest level. So you were getting 60 reputation instead of 300 per match. And so people were doing the math where you'd have to play like 300 matches to be able to reset your rank twice in order to get the title. So there's a bunch of people that kind of checked out once that bug was discovered. I was fortunate enough that I didn't play till late enough in the evening that I read about the bug and knew not to complete the challenge on any more characters. And so I didn't get screwed, so I could continue to farm, and I was able to reset my reputation once. And then on Friday, right at the end of kind of the business day, bless Bungie's hearts, because this is definitely like, they could have not fixed this and just sort of left it, and there'd be a lot more backlash. But they were able to fix that bug, and so you could continue to complete challenges, and they doubled the amount of reputation that you earned per match. So now you could get like 660 per match completion. So I was able to get my second reset in like 10 matches or something like ridiculously short, assuming you were winning every match. Because if you lost a match, you'd get like 440. So essentially, if you won one and lost one, you get about 1,000, and you need 10,000. So you could do it somewhere in about 20 matches, somewhere between 10 and 20 matches, depending on how efficient you were and things like that. So I think the general feedback from a lot of people was this is really buggy, and to have the title tied to a bunch of like buggy circumstances was, I think, what really triggered a lot of people. I think that it's fantastic that so to answer your original question, I know I kind of went off on a tangent. To answer your initial question, I think a lot of people don't like that you can't see how many kills you got, but that's great because people like me who like to go and try to play the objective and try to stop the runner or be the runner, I had a chance to shine and be like top scorer on a lot of matches because I would play the objective or would try to protect the runner, and actually like I had a lot of fun, I'll admit, playing Titan, because I would use the either like the rally barricade, or I would use my super and throw up a shield, a banner shield, and be able to like basically block all shots and escort the runner. And that was like really satisfying to be able to get them to go all the way to the end and get it to dunk. And it's like, yeah, I made that happen. And that's like really satisfying. So I had a lot of fun playing the objective and showing off like that I played the objective and I am contributing to why we won versus like, oh, look, I got 50 kills. Like, who cares? It doesn't matter if you lose every match that way. So I think a lot of backlash was like those people that just like to farm medals and kills and show off their KD. It's like, this is not the game mode for you then. Like, go find something else. I will say my kind of final thought on this is there were a lot of bugs, and I think Rift, as great as it was to bring it back, I don't know if they also should have brought the Iron Lord title and have it associated with the new game mode. Like it feels like the first time we did this title, it should be associated with kind of traditional control and have it be kind of traditional Iron Banner. And then try it like next season, have it be like Rift oriented or Mayhem oriented. So it feels like kind of too many things at once. I think that's like that critique I kind of agree with, that maybe it shouldn't have been Rift for this first go around.
Mm-hmm. I think you made a good argument about in support of getting rid of kills on the scoreboard. I think that makes sense. In an objective based game mode, kills aren't the main focus, and it could detract from, like you said, the actual important part of it, which is depositing the sparks and stuff like that. How do you feel about the complaints that the transmat part of it, where you get teleported back to your base, kind of breaks up the momentum of the game mode?
I completely agree that it does, and the one legit criticism I've seen from that is like, it's annoying if you've got like stacks of like charged with light, or if you've got that hunter aspect where you get the solar like dynamite, that all of that stuff resets. And I definitely agree that that's kind of frustrating. But as I was talking about earlier, it's way too easy for a team, if it's a competent team, to just respawn lock people into their location, and it's so like debilitating to have to deal with that I'm glad that it forces that restart, so you can't just like spawn trap.
Sure, yeah.
I agree that it's jarring, but after I don't know how many matches I've played this week, you got kind of used to it. Oh, that's the other bug that I wanted to talk about, is like, if there was only a few seconds left in the match, I think this is what spawned the glitch. You would just infinitely transmat. Like, you would spawn in, and then it would be like transmat firing, and then like it would count down 3, 2, 1, and then you would go to black screen again, and then it would transmat. So I could see people getting really annoyed with that, because that was another bug, and a lot of people would leave with that. And eventually the match would just sort of like end in a draw, or it would just sort of like end it. So at least there was some kind of logic there. But I think that that's kind of it was jarring, but you kind of get used to it, and it serves a purpose. That it forces a reset and gets everyone back to their side, so you can't spawn trap people. I'm all for it. I think it maybe could have like flowed a little bit better, but if that's the only way, like in the software and code to be able to get it to work properly, then that's what they had to do. And like I said, if you play enough Elimination or Trials of Osiris or Survival, like, you're used to that, like going black and kind of resetting. So it wasn't that jarring.
That's what I was thinking, because like, as someone who isn't very familiar with Rift from D1, I didn't think it was jarring, because it just felt like the end of a round. It's like, oh yeah, I just thought like the animation was unnecessary. It felt,
yeah, I agree with that.
Like, it's cool, but like, yeah, it just felt like an end of the round to me.
Right.
Robbie, did you encounter any of these significant bugs in the few matches that you played?
Well, I don't think I paid too much attention, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
The funny part, and I hear you guys talking about this, and I guess for me it was always like this, and actually that's why I think like Control is such a good game mode for this game, is because I'm of the opposite mindset. Like, if I want to farm my KD and if I want to farm kills, I go into objective play modes and kill the guys who don't care about dying and just trying to run after the flag, because that's the easy ways to do it.
Yeah.
you basically have no opposition. If you find yourself like a nice little corner where people are like away from the flag and just like, start laning down people that are going after the flag after they respawn or whatever. That's always been the issue. And the issue with games even since Halo, right? I think like that's why they don't have like capture the flag in here or something. And that's why I was thinking about this when I played it. I was like, there's no flag. It's like a buff thing.
Right. You can continue to like use your weapons. You can't use your
Yeah.
super, but you can use your abilities, and you can.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's no like also physical flag, because I mean you've seen what happens with the physics in this game,
Right.
There would be someone that finds like an exploit to like push the flag all the way to the other side,
Right.
or something like that. So that was the first thing I was thinking about. Like I was literally just thinking more about comparing that to like previous Bungie experiences and how those game, because I like probably my favorite game mode in the whole Halo series was also always capture the flag, and so then this one was like, well, there's no flag, there's no this. I was just thinking more about those things, and in my mind again, not ever playing Rift in D1, that was kind of like my focus on the whole experience, instead of like trying to pay attention to the other minutia that I probably would have or probably did miss myself.
Mm-hmm. Did you think the transmat thing was jarring at all?
I thought, no, I don't know. I just feel like it was kind of like slow and a bit unforgiving the whole way. You had to wait a lot of time for things to happen. I don't know. It didn't feel very fluid to me.
Okay.
And like also talking about animations, I've noticed there's like several ones that I've never even paid attention to.
So the new Rift mode also features a new map. This is called Disjunction. It's set in Savathun's throne world, and it's pretty huge. Rob, what are your thoughts on this new map so far?
Disjunction is pretty cool. It's big. I think a little unnecessarily big, and it kind of made for some parts of Rift to sort of kind of suck, because you had like there was such a huge gap that you had to like fill if you maybe got killed and you were trying to run back to the action. Like there was definitely times where I'm like, yeah, there's no chance they're dunking it, like it's over. Whereas it didn't feel that bad in Convergence or Bannerfall, because they're big but they're not that big.
Mm-hmm.
The map itself is cool. The aesthetic of it is fantastic. This is one of those things where it's like, yeah, every expansion should come with at least one map that's themed in whatever the aesthetic is. Like with the fact that we still haven't gotten a Europa PvP map is like, that's unfortunate, because this kind of feels like that. And I think the map itself is cool. It's gigantic. I'm excited to try it out in like a normal 6v6 environment. I am not excited to try it out in something like Trials or Comp, because there are so many lanes and so many weird geometries that you can peek, that like I know I'm gonna die a lot to just random stuff where I'm like, I didn't even know you could see that from there. And
Is it going to be a Trials map?
I assume so. Like, why wouldn't it be?
Because it's huge and it feels
yeah.
like a proper 6v6 map, and I don't see this working at all in a 3v3 situation.
I could see in where they have like the Trials labs where it's you have to grab the control point. There's a lot of different places you could put that cap point to make it really interesting. And that would at least make the rounds short, because you have to go and grab the cap. So even though it's a huge map, you're not utilizing 80% of it. But it does at least sort of force some interesting like interactions. Because I think the mid area where the fights are is pretty well designed, and I think it forces a lot of cool fights. And because you can do like the huge like go on the big outer perimeter, you can do some pretty neat stuff with it. I'm assuming they're at least going to try it out at least 1 week to see how it goes. But if you have it be the cap point version of Trials, that would at least force it to go pretty quickly. So I think you could make it work.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fair. Do you think, how do you feel about the fact that there's only 3 maps in the Rift game mode?
That after playing, I don't know how many matches I played. I know it was at least 60 matches this week, probably closer to like 75. it definitely you start to get tired of those 3 maps. And I think there are maps that aren't symmetric, but you still could have made work. Like Midtown, I think would have been perfectly fine. There's the kind of Trials of Osiris map that's on Mercury, the big one that you could have made work as well. The one that's in daytime, not the nighttime one that's originally from D1. There's a few maps that they could have put in there that would have been nice and big and could have supported a Rift despite not being symmetric. You still could have made it work. And in fact, if you're going to do like the whole transmat thing, then you could have the spawns alternate each time. So that way you can't say like, well, one side always gets the more favorable spawn. If you have it alternate, then you get rid of that as a variable. So I think 3 maps was not enough, considering like they knew people were going to be grinding it this week for the Iron Lord title, and like 3 was not enough. We needed at least 6 or more.
Yeah, I don't get that at all. Such a weird decision.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, the whole complaint was we don't have maps.
Right,
And then you
and-
finally have a map. And then you're like, yeah, but we're taking away all these other ones and just having 3. It's
Right.
like,
If
did you
they-
really add something? Because it looks to me like you just removed something.
Right. Like I said,
Again.
there's other maps that could have worked, I think.
Right, but this is my question to you. They don't really do playtesting, right? Like, at this point, I'm like 100% sure that they don't playtest anything.
Yeah.
Like, we are the playtest.
Yeah,
I think
so,
that's
too.
the whole lab's idea, is that we are the playtest.
Right. Well, I would have loved it.
So,
Like, do they? This is something I've always wondered, and I'm not trying to like point fingers, but I'm curious when they design like seals and titles and all of that stuff. Do they have someone actually play through the entire seal to sort of give feedback on what that experience is? Because like put someone in that position, like, okay, Johnny test guy, play this until you unlock this title. Okay, how was it? And if he's like, you have to add more than 3 maps because I was about ready to stab my eyes out. Like, okay, that's a good piece of feedback. Like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. I'm curious how they like. Do they test that the sealed and title work and that it progresses correctly? Okay, good. Or did they actually like run through it for the actual quote unquote experience of what it's like to earn it? And they know that we're crazy grinding bastards, and that like there was going to be people like me who were going to get it that first week.
Yeah.
And like, what is that experience? I hope for their sake that they add a few more maps by the next time Iron Banner comes around, because like I'm not going to play it next time if it's those same 3 maps, because like I'm good on it. If they had done like 6 or 7 different maps and weighted it more towards Disjunction so that you got it maybe every 3rd or 2nd time, yeah, I could see that, because they're excited
Yeah.
about the new map. This is
Yeah.
really sort of showcasing Rift in its like ideal form, where you have a big symmetric map that really has all these cool geometries and places to hide behind. Great. I'm all for that. But to have the same 3 maps over and over and over again, it was getting pretty terrible towards the end.
Yeah, I'm gonna be perfectly honest, and I don't think I'm not trying to, exaggerate for the sake of jokes. I don't think they have people playtest titles,
Well, they do
especially.
have the new project, right? That is a PvP thing, and whoever was lead of PvP moved on to that,
Yeah,
as far as I understand.
Mhm.
And also, like, one thing I always try to think about, and because I see it from my perspective, right? When you see the thing about like the map from Beyond Light or from Europa specifically, like, it always reminds me of like on Halo 3, on the Legendary Map Pack, there was a map called Avalanche, which was the first snowy map ever.
Oh yeah.
And that came out, and everybody was
cool,
super
man.
excited about it. But then it turned out it's just basically like a whole emptiness with like a little underground thing, and so like it was chaotic, and nobody liked it. It never made it into the competitive playlist, which existed in Halo,
Right.
and it never made it to MLG. But it was used a lot in Forge because it was a blank canvas, so you
Right,
could do a
yeah.
lot of things. People were doing like race tracks and like a lot of really cool things, right? So the map ended up finding like its place in the game because of the player base and not because of like the original intended feature itself. But it always reminds me of that. And I feel like, since we don't really have that here, Because imagine if this game would allow you to make your own racetrack for sparrows in
Right.
whichever map you wanted. Like the game would be like a whole different thing. But alas, we don't. So, like, I see how that worked out then, and then I think about, well, they have all this experience as a company, but then I'm also having to remind myself every single time all those people are not in Bungie anymore.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. So I feel like there was a disconnect, and it probably was in D2, because I feel like a lot of those people were still in Bungie for Destiny 1, especially some of the head of like certain divisions in there, doing certain things. But like I feel like nowadays, like the people who are running the game are like, they've only been in D2, so they've been experiencing with D2. So I feel like this is like a whole different phase of like that whole baggage is out the window. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird because again, it's Bungie, but it's not Bungie. In a way, I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of
No, you're absolutely right. It's hard when it was when D1 first launched. People were like, these people made Halo, but it's like even at that time, Bungie had kind of split up, and a bunch of those guys kind of stayed with 343 Studios, correct?
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like even then, you couldn't necessarily make that argument that it's like it's not the same core team, and that you're bringing new people in. They're gonna have different perspectives, and now even then, in the last couple of years, they've been bringing in a lot more people for like narrative teams and design, and so it's like it's not the same core people anymore. So it's like it's not really fair to make that argument. It's just it's a different group of people. Those some of those people have gone off to other companies and done other things, right? Like so it is an interesting situation to be in, and the team that's at Bungie now is not the same team that made Halo 3. There's still a lot of the same people, but it's not the same core team. It's just different.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like the experiences that they have and how they've been trying to test out their ideas is we gotta take it more like as a fresh perspective on like what they want this game to be.
Yeah,
and kind of leave a lot of that behind, because that's usually what happens to me. Like I ended up comparing it a lot with like previous personal experiences with their games,
right?
And I kind of have to separate myself from like, okay, this is not the same,
right?
And this is like a new. They're testing things out, and this is like a new thing, and and they might get some things wrong, and they definitely get some things right. And one thing I like about the live service is that it's not like it was back then. Like we would get a Mac pack every 3-6 months,
right?
And yeah, you would think like people were not complaining back then. Whatever the game shipped with, that was it. You never got anything new. When those map packs came out, it was like, wow, we get new maps. That was mind blowing. But now we get like changes, like and that's a good thing. Like we can't be judging it, and I feel like that's how I felt about me playing the little bit of Iron Manor this weekend. Was like, yeah, there might be a lot of criticism, and I hated seeing all that thing on Twitter because it really made no sense to me. Because yeah, whatever, they are super fast anyway to respond to these things, right? And if they get them wrong one weekend, they might get it amazing the next weekend, and then the next one might be bad again. Like I don't know, but it's gonna change, and it changes every time, and they kind of do learn about things, because we saw that with Trials, right? Like they had some really awful weekends where people were not like into it at all, but there were also some weekends where like people were static, and it was great, and the world was beautiful. So yeah, I feel like that's my takeout from this. Just I feel like the taking the maps out was like, I mean, just try it out. Like, who is it harming?
Right.
If one of the, whichever many maps you have on the playlist is gonna be like a shit show, they've done it before too. Disable the map, right? So they could literally patch it throughout the day and be like, okay, this is not a big patch. It's just like this map gets out of rotation. That's it.
Right.
So on both sides, on the player base, don't be so judgy, and then for them, it's just like also try more things and just like if it doesn't work out, just disable it, and I'm sure that people will be more agreeable to that kind of like decisions.
Well, I distinctly, I feel like I remember, I could be wrong, and I'm sure someone will call me out. I feel like there was one time when Iron Banner came out that it's when they released like Twilight Gap back into D2, and they heavily weighted that week on Twilight Gap and like one other map, and people were pretty like okay, stop doing Twilight Gap. And I feel like halfway through the week, they kind of changed the map frequency, if you will, and made it so that it was a little more balanced across everything. So yeah, they have shown in the past that they can do things like that. I mean, they even patched the reputation thing halfway through the week. They were able to fix it like by Friday afternoon, and everyone was able to kind of continue on their merry way. So I agree. They should have tried to be a little more ambitious. Again, I don't know if it was like a time thing or if there was an executive decision of like, no, we only want Rift to be on symmetric maps, which I think is a very limiting design choice if that's the case. But yeah, they could have tried a few more maps, and if it was just hot garbage, they could have patched those out halfway through the week and said, okay, sorry, it's going to be kind of light. We'll go back and rethink some of these layouts in the Rift location on some of these maps, and we'll just keep it with the symmetric ones for now. Like they could have done something like that.
Yeah. And even if they did that, I assure you that if they had done that, there would be still people being like, but I love that map and you took it away, So like, it's going to happen regardless of, yeah.
Because it like, so one of the maps that released with Rift, because Rift came out with the Taken King, I think. Yes. There was a Mercury map that had these cool kind of like, you could, right by where the Rift was, there was a portal, and if you went through the portal, it would take you to this outside spot that sort of was on the opposite side of the map, and you could very easily jump to either side of either opponent's Rift by jumping from this island. But as soon as you teleported to the island, there was like basically nothing protecting you, so you were like completely out in the open. So if you timed it right and you could eliminate enough of the enemy team, you could run through the portal and very quickly dunk your Rift. And that was a fantastic map. And to be honest, I was hoping that they would bring back one of those kind of like flagship maps as part of Rift in addition to Disjunction. So like they've kind of done it well in the past. But yeah, just overall the takeaway of only having 3 maps, I think, is a huge kind of hit against the overall experience.
A big miss for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it will. It's a stain on the whole experience, especially if you're playing, more than a couple matches per week.
Right.
If you're going to grind for this stuff, it's going to weigh on you.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think we didn't bring it up when I was kind of giving the overview. So it's first to 5 wins, and it's a 10-minute match. So if nothing else, after 10 minutes, and they did do a cool thing. So like if let's say the score is 3-1, if the team that's down by 2 has the Rift and time runs out, it just ends. But if let's say the match is 3-2 and the team that's down 1 has the Rift, it will go into overtime until they drop the Rift. So it does give you an opportunity to have a hero moment, which did happen for us once. Our team ended up dunking in overtime, and then overtime will do multi-spark where it'll spawn 3 kind of in the center across, and then it's just kind of a chaotic madness to try to grab one of the 3, and the first person to dunk wins. So it adds kind of a hectic aspect to it. That happened quite a bit because there was a lot of times where the Rift would despawn and the score would be 0-0, and then it would go to 10 minutes, which is terrible because people would just kind of slay out each other for back and forth for 10 minutes until the match ended. And then it would go to multi-spark, and then it was like basically whoever just got luckier would win, which that happened more times than I'd like to admit. So I think the 10-minute rounds was way too long. And I think it should not have been first to 5. It should have been first to 3. Because I want to say any time that a team went to 3 points first, never lost. Very rarely would it be like 3-0, and then the other team would come back from that and get like 4 points and win. I don't think I ever saw that the entire weekend or the entire week. So I think you could have done first to 3. Maybe you could have done 6-minute matches, and that would have helped out with a lot, and you would have had kind of a quicker turnover. And if you even want to say, well, then it would have been too easy to farm reputation, then you could have lowered how much reputation you got from each match because you're doing them in effectively half the time. I think the solo experience, because I did primarily solo versus I did a little bit of like there was 4 or 5 of us, and we did that like the first night quite a bit. And going against 6 stacks was definitely like a different experience than doing solo experience, because solo, everyone's kind of running around with their heads cut off. But I will say, as the week went on, people got better about rezzing teammates and actually kind of like not just trying to grab the spark and run up the gut and dunk it. Like if you grab the spark, you would kind of wait for your teammate to, or your teammates to like squat up and like, okay, let's attack this as a group and try to like there was a couple times where it's like, oh, they got heavy, so I'd run up ahead and like absorb the rocket, so the guy running the rift, running the spark, could actually go dunk it in the rift and like effectively making them waste their rocket shot. So like if you had a good team and you could coordinate, you could completely go solo and do well. And I think at one point I was on like a 7 or 8 win streak, doing it exclusively solo. So I think solo is perfectly fine, but I think the overall like length of matches and going first to 5 seemed a little much.
Sure. There's a freelance mode, correct?
Yep.
When you say solo, yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I did freelance like the entire time.
Okay, yeah, sweet. So you guys appreciate that the freelance mode is being implemented.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it seemed to work well. Like there was matches where, and I had a couple really like nail biting freelance matches where we went like 6 minutes without a single dunk happening, because we just had like good composition and the other team was good, where they'd try to dunk it and then we could like kind of kill them and grab the spark and get it somewhere back to the middle, and then they'd kill us, and it was like a lot of back and forth and very like kind of stressful, and it's like no one's even scored and everyone's already got their supers, and so like then the supers come out and it's chaotic. Like there were some good matches in freelance that weren't just complete steamrolls, and I that's been another criticism that I've seen, where it's like as soon as a team, like you can tell certain teams are just gonna get 5-0 and then it's like over, and you might as well just let it happen. And that happened quite a bit, but I did have some good matches where I walked away from that being like, I want to play those people again, because that was a fun experience.
That's good.
Robbie, what's your response?
Well, I feel kind of like the idea of 3, even though like you say it might be too quick, I don't think it would be too bad, because at least you have like a fighting chance. Like I think people would be more encouraged to try to get back. Like if you're 2-0, you're like, I can still win this, and it will take the same amount of time. But if you're going for the reputation and if you're going for the engrams and drops and all these things, like once you're like 3-0 or 3-0, like you said, it's just easier to just let it happen, because there's really no encouragement to waste more time or effort or anything. Just like be over with it. That's fine. So yeah, definitely, probably shorter would have been better. I don't know. I don't think I played it that much to actually, because I wasn't really going for the reputation and stuff. But I obviously know that people want the seal. I want the seal too. So
Yeah.
So with that being said, let's talk the new Solar 3.0. New are they fragments or fragments, right?
Yes.
I get the fragments and
I know. I'll never remember.
I know. Anyways, I believe the 4 are, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they are Ember of Ashes, which is you apply more scorch stacks to targets. Ember of Char, which is your solar ignition spreads scorch to affected targets and you get plus 10 discipline. Ember of Empyrean, which I think is the best one. Solar weapon or ability final blows extend the duration of restoration and radiant effects applied to you, and you get minus 10 resilience, which I really don't think is that big of a deal. Ember of Wonder, rapidly defeating multiple targets with solar ignitions generates an orb of power, and you get plus 10 resilience. So, let's talk. I'll start with you, Robbie. Have you been able to mess around with any of these 4 new solar fragments?
I was waiting for the one that gives you discipline. Like I was gonna use it no matter what it actually did. That was the whole point of it. Like I feel like for me, Solar has been a lot of like experimenting and actually trying to, like, at least this time when I mentioned it before, trying to not like be super spammy, but I still notice that like you can easily, well, not easily, easier. It's easier to get to triple hundreds. With this system, kind of like with Stasis was, instead of just relying on your armor, because you need less pieces. And actually, the funny part about that is that since last season it was so easy to get high stat armor with like really decent rolls, a lot of my like bottlenecks are exotic armor pieces now. because you might have like really good everything else, but then you have like just a mediocre exotic armor piece, and this kind of compensates for that. So sometimes I feel like, especially for warlocks, like getting the buff. I forget the name. I'm so sorry. I just blanked out on it.
The Radiance?
Radiant, yeah. So for warlocks, getting Radiance, it's, I don't know why, but I feel like it's, at least from my little playtime with the other ones and from what other people have told me, is like harder to achieve than on the other classes. You're reliant on, like, for example, the melee kill, right? When you snap your fingers, like I started throwing that at enemies' feet to try to kill them with the splash, because sometimes you would do it and it would just literally go on the sides of someone and not hit them at all. And it doesn't really kill yellow bars, not even on like low end content. So to proc that with the melee kill, it wasn't as effective. So a lot of the things I've been trying to do is just rely more on the stats. And a lot of people have actually been shifting, from what I hear, to like running resilience instead of recovery, which is kind of interesting to me. And I need to like really wrap my head around that, because they did kind of buff resilience in a way, but now it just feels like more necessary than it used to. And recovery seems a bit like under. Yeah. I feel like resilience might help more people now than recovery did, because with recovery, you could hide and you had to take cover for less time in order to get back into the fight. But I feel like with the ability spam and all these, like Devour in the previous seasons and all this thing, we're moving towards this playstyle of like being more tanky and just like rushing into things. And I see that even on Grandmasters, which is, one reason why I kind of changed my mind a little bit about those. That is less tactical and more like Rambo, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So yeah, like sometimes like playing with a build for me has been like literally just like getting the stats I want.
Right.
And so that discipline one was like the one I was just waiting for. I don't think it changed a lot of what I was doing before with the Warlock anyway.
Okay.
The new ones, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Rob, do you have a response to that?
I don't know. It's neat to see the stat requirements swing a little bit, and that like recovery is not the hot thing. And I think it's actually kind of an interesting response to like, well, once you farm out like perfect stat distributions, like what's the point? It's like, well, now they've made resilience a little more useful and have utility, or whatever your class ability is, in this case like hunters being able to keep like mobility up high again.
Suppose they get a barrel roll. Like,
exactly. They do get a sweet barrel roll. I think that I've seen some complaints that classy restoration is kind of busted in PvP. I don't think so, because it doesn't last very long, but I am intrigued. Like, I'm intrigued to see how this all plays out in GM Nightfalls, because like there's a lot of builds claiming that you're like unkillable.
Yeah.
But like I was doing a master Wellspring, and I was still getting one shot once in a while by stuff, even though I had like restoration up and I felt like I was like unkillable. I still got like the supers by the Taken, or not, sorry, the Hive Guardians still one shotted me. So like you're not completely indestructible, and I am curious to see how GMs play out, because that's really going to be the real test when you're down 25 light levels and your ability to get like, because a lot of these builds that I've seen online, people are like, oh, as long as you keep killing something every 3 seconds, it's like you're not going to be able to do that in GMs. So I think there's going to be a handful of builds that rise from the top that actually are able to respond to some of these difficulties in GMs, but I'm curious to see how it all plays out by the end of the season.
It'll be interesting. This is a little bit off topic. As a hunter, I kind of wish that Solar 3.0 lended itself more to an offensive playstyle and focused
Yes.
more on like increasing damage versus Void, because like at least on Hunter, the whole gimmick of like Void is that you're going invisible 97 times, you know, in the span of 5 minutes, and it's all about survivability. So I wish this was like, I wish Solar 3.0's best capability was less about survivability and more about something more offensive, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
PvP though, like I see hunters, like at least from my like again short experience with PvP, because it hasn't been the thing I've been doing most at all. Hunters are like the biggest issue for me. Like they'll throw a knife and hit the wall and I'm dead.
Yeah.
And I don't understand how that happens. It doesn't matter where it hits. I'm just dead. I have to accept it.
Sure.
But they feel stronger than the other two classes. I would actually say that like people who have been playing them really, really well, I would say that Warlock now is like the weakest solar PvP class.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
saying hunters are weak. I'm just saying I wish in
No, but
terms of
it
like
feels
identity.
offensive. Again, I haven't really dived into it myself, but like the way I've seen hunters play PvP, it does feel like the solar lends itself to being like a really offensive subclass now.
Okay, sure, because it's got the like, you know, a big focus on knives, and it's got the cool grenade and stuff like that. Sure, that's fair. I guess I feel like the best thing is the classy restoration thing, especially with the new fragment, and I
Right.
feel like that's like, I don't know. I feel like it overpowers the other stuff, and maybe I just suck, and I haven't played enough with Solar 3.0 to like.
That tends to be my issue too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah. Well, and this is. I mean, we talked about this last week. This is going to be one of those. We'll have to see how it all pans out at the end of the season, and if Solar still has utility, or if it's like, wow, classy restoration was kind of the crutch that carried that the entire season. And we'll have to see. I suspect not, because I think that the Empyrean one, I think has some pretty nutty stuff, and with like, hopefully, because we can talk about the change the patch that's coming out next week, that being able to pair that with the healing nade, I suspect we'll still be able to make some pretty like tanky builds. But I agree with you that I was hoping there'd be more offensive aspects, and that healing. I was kind of hoping that healing would stay with the Warlock, like each one sort of had its like identity. But now it's like people are saying like Hunters and Titans can heal better than Warlocks can. But obviously the change that's coming out next week, I think, is kind of shifting that dynamic. But it does kind of feel like that when the Hunter can do a barrel roll and radiate everyone. It's kind of like, wow, what's like, again, that, you know, I was talking about like how it sucks that like everyone can use trip mine grenades. It's like those sort of like identity things are slipping away, and it didn't feel like that as much with Void. Like Warlocks still felt like they were dominant with Devour, and Titans still feel like they were like the defensive one, and Hunters still felt like they were I'm going to go invisible, like you said, 78 times. Like each one still feel like it had like, this is what you are supposed to build into with this subclass. But with Solar, it's like it's all over the place. Like, are you supposed to be burning things? Are you supposed to be healing? Should you be trying to do everything? Like, and each class sort of feels like it does all of them, but not great. Like they all kind of feel like a jack of all trades, but master of none. And certainly you can build into, like I was watching a video where someone made like a nutty knife throwing build that uses the Caliban grasp thing. And you can do some pretty crazy stuff with that, or with a Ophidia Spathe, because you get the two knives if you do that. So like there are definitely still some crazy things that you can do. But it feels like again, we'll have to see how GMs dictate, because like that's going to be the real tell of what can you actually survive and tank, and what can you take down with these quote unquote like busted builds. Because that's, I'm not trying to knock on anybody, but like when you see all these clickbaity titles of like, this is the new godly Titan build or whatever, and it's just like, it looks like everything else, and then it's like, okay, that's all well and good in like a lost sector that's not even like legend, but let's see how it actually does in GMs when everything is one-shotting you. And now, and I'm intrigued to see that. For once, I'm excited about the quote unquote one-shots in GMs, because like, okay, let's see how good some of these builds actually are.
Yeah.
Sure.
I feel like tanky has been like the keyword for a lot of them.
Right.
On the other hand, though, just to, a bit oppose that thought, like I and just me being like maybe not caring too much about GMs anymore is like now I'm more inclined to look into these other builds where I can just destroy things on normal content, right? Like go in the normal raid, and destroy things. And like I feel like that's kind of what, for me, the game is moving. And so these builds are becoming more important to me as opposed to like the GM builds that I would usually, lean towards. So I don't know if it matters that much that the thing works in GMs anymore, because most people are not gonna care.
Well, here's the cool thing though, Robbie. I think you hit the nail on the head. Is like you've completely shifted your focus, and it's kind of what I was telling you guys too earlier before we started. It's like I suddenly a light turned on, and now I care about playing PvP more than like anything else in the game.
Yeah,
and
it's
that's
been a
what's
changing
cool.
season for all of us, I think.
Right,
in some regards.
Right, and that's what's fantastic about Destiny. I think is like you can kind of just like, well, I feel like I'm just gonna just play legend raids all the time and just nuke everything and have fun doing that, and that's great because you can have fun doing that. But I think the game is also trying to get players into not necessarily playing one subclass, but I think it's sort of laying out like once Arc 3.0 comes out, whenever that is, it's going to be okay. Now all the cards are out on the table. Everything is viable in endgame PvP. You can do whatever you want, and if you only want to exclusively play that, you're not going to be a detriment to your team. Like maybe you want to be that Stasis Warlock that's just the Osmiomancy throwing turrets constantly. Like that will always be viable regardless of what season is out and what subclass is out. And when Arc 3.0 comes out, maybe there's going to be some Chaos Reach build that's going to be absolutely nutty. And then if you only want to play Chaos Reach in GMs, regardless of what season it is and regardless of what's out there, you can do that because you've heavily spec'd into that build so much and have fun with that. And because like that's how I'm looking at it is like, yeah, Solar's fun, but I know that when GMs come out that I can use my Osmiomancy build and that it'll still be useful.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's where they're heading is like they're putting everything out there so you can do whatever you want and build heavily into one specific subclass if you want to, and have that be like your bread and butter. Like you want to be a Stasis Warlock and run it in PvP and PvE and whatever. But because all the builds and all the aspects and fragments are out there, like it's good for you. And that kind of feels like my interpretation of what's happening is like they're finally revamping these subclasses so that all of them are equally viable and all have nutty builds, and that you don't need to feel pigeonholed into just using 3 Osmiomancy Warlocks for every GM, because you can be this unkillable solar god, or you can be some like arc beast that's just arcing everything together and doing all kinds of chain lightning stuff, and like who knows. But all of them are going to have utility, and then it's really just up to the user, like what do you want to play.
Right.
And that's cool, because like even like I was playing, like I've been enjoying playing with the incandescent perk on all of those solar weapons, and I think it's so cool that they added, and then with Void they added that new perk where it's like if you kill something that's like weakened by Void, you get like an overshield. Like that's such a cool thing. Like I'm excited to see what the new kind of like mini perk is for Arc when that comes out. What's going to be like a mini chain lightning type thing or whatever, it's like. So, like, I think this is all good.
Yeah,
and that
I'm a bit concerned because, like, the way I see it is like I've experienced something like this in another game, like in an MMO, to be specific, right?
Right.
Like where you can get through a raid. Let's talk about like a dungeon, right? Let's talk about like a really hard mode dungeon.
Okay.
You can get through it with like not optimal classes or of people like, oh, I want to play this because this is fun to me. Yeah, you can get through it. It's going to be harder. It might take longer, whatever. You can do it. And I feel like that's what's happening to this. But the optimal way, like, of like having a tank Titan, let's just for comparison, right? And a DPS Hunter and a support Warlock. Like, right. I feel like that's going a bit into the background. And you've talked about this, of them kind of losing their identities.
Right.
So like, are we gonna have the DPS Titan and and the tank hunter and the, like, is it gonna be just like that, where like it doesn't really matter anymore, even for hard content? And my problem with it is that I feel that it's not like, I do understand what you're saying, and I'm actually kind of glad that it's a bit like this, that you can spec into things. I've wanted, like, theory crafting is one of my favorite parts of the game. But what I feel like is that is not only that, is that the hard content is also being dumbed down to allow for this. That's what it feels like to me. Instead of keeping it hard or even making it harder so that, yeah, you can get through it with these fun subclasses builds that you're running, but you can also be optimal, right? It doesn't feel like they went that way. It feels like they went like that. Let's dumb it down and make it accessible to everybody and to every subclass and to most builds. Unless you're really going for like some meme build, you should be able to get through, right? And that's what I don't like about the hard content, because it's not hard content anymore.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
It's like a double-sided blade for me right now, and I don't find my place on it,
Yeah, no, and I guess I think part of that problem is, though, is like we get the with the games as a service kind of part to this, where the game is constantly shifting. We're also in that time where each subclass is getting its season to shine. Yeah. And I feel like when the dust settles and Arc 3.0 is out, maybe we will eventually get another Darkness subclass. I don't know. Like, I know there was rumors at one point. We'll see if that eventually happens. But maybe in a couple seasons from now, when all the subclasses are out, all the aspects and fragments, and we get kind of into a quote unquote normal cadence of seasons where there isn't necessarily an emphasis on any one particular element, maybe then they can focus on making content harder. And then let sort of the intended, because I feel like this is like, what's the long-term goal here? What do they want us to have by Lightfall and the final shape? And what do they want the state of the game to be? And it's like, well, if we have all the fragments and aspects and all we're doing is minor tweaks here and there for balancing purposes, but we're not emphasizing, because right now, obviously, the name of the game is Solar. But and then the name of the game will be Arc when that comes out, and like we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, and, so I think just to clarify, because I don't want, because I kind of see kind of where you're going, but I understand that, and I completely agree with you, and I look forward to it.
Right.
But so just to clarify my point, it's like I'm not saying I'm unhappy with the game as it is, because I'm not. Like, I'm just saying, like, I shifted from like that to like this over here is really, really fun. So I rather do that. I rather run the meme build. I rather use the weapons that I want to use and don't feel forced to use, which actually was like a big complaint for a lot of people, right?
Right.
Like being forced into something. And I feel like now it's like, oh, here's some variety. But just stop the void SMGs, please. Like, I know we didn't have one, and now we got like 20 all of a sudden. We don't need more. But besides that, like, I'm super, I have fun. I enjoy the game. I'm maybe enjoying in a different place than I was before, but I think, like, and you said that before too, that's, just how the game is. Like, maybe this season you're going to shift to something else. And yeah, I just don't want to sound like I'm complaining about, like, me liking the game, because I do. Like, I'm having fun.
No, and I all of this is to say, yeah, it's like, but that's what's cool too, is like, look, if you just want to play GMs, season in, season out, and like that's all you want to do, then yeah, maybe you find that there's a trend that it's leaning towards being a little more easy right now. But I think that's kind of one of the points of Destiny, is like, play what you want to play, and here's this giant list of things that you can do. If you want to play heavily into higher end level content, then you need to be grinding and doing pinnacles. But if you just find yourself like, I just want to do some Vault of Glass this week, like, you don't need to be crazy hardcore. Or if you enjoy weapon crafting and trying to get the red border weapons and doing that, like, you can play into that and kind of like do all of these fun things. If you like doing Legend Lost Sectors because that solo challenge is like right up your alley, like they're giving you the options to do whatever you want. And maybe that means sacrificing some difficulty at that expense, that might be the case, but at least there's always something for you to do.
Yeah, and I
but-
do understand that like it's hard to tune hard content when like the game
Right.
is not even constantly evolving, but like we know it's gonna have to evolve
Right.
in the
And
in
you-
the next couple of seasons. So
Right. And you have to wonder, the people that are designing GM perks and designing the GMs, how much are they talking to the guy who's designing the artifact mods? And like, obviously they're
I
talking
feel like
to
that's
some
a
degree.
response too, and we haven't talked about that. But like for example, the hunter, and you mentioned that about like giving radiance to everybody with the backflip thing.
Right. The barrel roll.
Yeah, I love the barrel roll. It looks so cool.
Yeah.
I like it too.
But see, to me, that was more like not a towards like giving. I don't know. It's basically, as I understand it in my head, is like, all right, we are moving away from the charged with light mods, and we don't want you to always be running like the protection and all these things.
Right.
And this is basically like powerful friends.
Right.
And it's kind of all combined into this new thing where we're not gonna force you anymore to like have to spec into those mods because you have to spec into those mods,
Right.
right? So that's why I understand, and it's like, okay, well, if they can do it, it's fine, because in reality they were already doing it. It just wasn't with the subclass, right? It was with the mods.
Right.
And usually hunters would always run powerful friends. So
Right.
so that's where my balance comes in my head, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. I don't disagree with that, because I kind of like try to see where it's gonna go and like the utility be.
Right.
It's all
Yeah.
very exciting, actually.
Yeah, all of it to say is like, the game is in a way more complicated state than it has ever been, and I think it's for the better. I think it definitely maybe alienates new players, but I think the more you play, the more you can build into it. And it's like, that's also kind of the fun thing about the Solar and Void 3.0 and the fragments and aspects, is like the descriptions give you enough information that if you're just Johnny, play 1 hour a week and you just kind of want to play around with some of the fragments and aspects, like you're not going to hurt your team if you're just playing strikes and doing some basic PvP and stuff. But the ceiling is now like limitless in terms of theory crafting and building and all kinds of crazy stuff, that if Johnny plays once an hour, now wants to play 3 hours a night, can build into all of these things and see how deep the rabbit hole goes. And I think at least there should be some commendation for how deep they've made this rabbit hole now. And
some things are deep. I don't know how,
Yeah.
but like I got those the skins that you get from like Grandmasters. I don't have the Gambit one, but I have
Right.
the Trials one and the Mementos.
right,
So I put some Mementos on some of my guns since last season, and like they don't change it till you have them level 30, right?
right,
But since I've been trying to level up like other guns that I crafted from the raid and all that stuff, I think like about like 15, 16, you kind of unlock everything, so you can go.
right,
Maybe not the enhanced perks, but I've been trying to level those up as I do my grind in the new area, and try to get more red border weapons and all that stuff. Like I'm still not to the point where like any of the mementos is showing up. I think the highest I have is like a 28.
right.
So that's a grind that I did not expect. Like I
Right.
thought I would be done with that by now, but nope.
Yeah, no, and that's, I mean, I have a few clanmates. Shout out to Rory, because I'm going to pick on him for this one, because he's actually a pretty dedicated listener to the podcast. So,
No way.
like, yeah, no, he and a couple other guys, Nom too. I'll give a shout out to him. They are adamant and harass me whenever there isn't a new episode, and they're like, "Hey, we've noticed there's not a new episode out." And so they religiously listen, and they give me feedback, like when we're like rating. They're like, "Oh, I kind of like that you talked about this or didn't talk about this," and stuff like. So but up like Rory, he explicitly, as soon as he got his Trials memento, which is the one that makes it like gold and flowing, which looks pretty cool,
Yeah.
like he loaded up a Shirochi checkpoint and just got to 30.
Oh, well, I don't do that. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I don't either. And it's like, we were having a discussion one time, a few of us were, when we were like playing a raid, and it's like, it's really unfortunate that like you've already got the memento. And this goes into like, what's the point of weapon crafting and like unlocking the perks if you can just load up a Shirochi checkpoint and just get all of the kills like immediately and unlock all the perks? It's like it's just kind of a weird situation, and I wasn't giving him a hard time. It's just like he just went in and got it unlocked for his SMG, and it was like, okay, you just did it for like an hour or two so you could unlock it. Because he wanted the skin, and it looks really, really cool, and I totally get it. It's just like I think they need to reevaluate the whole like unlock perk cadence with weapon crafting, because it's like there's this huge workaround where you can just load up one of the unlimited spawning enemy areas, and like then there's like no point. So it's like yeah, if you got the memento, you should just be able to slot it in your weapon and put the skin the skin on, because it's like it's no different than you just loading up Shirochi and getting it in an hour. It's like
right.
I don't know what the point is. Like just give it to people.
In a way, yeah. In another way, like one time I tried it with one weapon, because not for the memento, but because I wanted to get it to like level 7 or something real quick.
Right.
And I loaded into the dungeon, the pirate dungeon, and I just like shooting into the cave basically. Right. And I was also there for like, I want to say like over an hour, maybe an hour or two. And I basically did get it to like 10 something. Right. So it's not as quick as you would think. But my answer to that is, if you go into the other dungeon in the Dreaming City, all those little shadow guys in certain parts where you would like, they keep respawning every single time.
The cursed thrall rooms, yeah.
You know, those guys don't count.
Right, they patched that out. I'm glad they did, and I thought they would have done it.
Yeah, so why can't they do that to the other ones?
I don't know.
Like, I'm just talking about little bits, like the cave in the beginning of the dungeon. Just do the cave. That's it. Everything else can stay fine. Same with the Shirochi, right? It's just, I mean, I don't know. That one's like a hard, because like, how would you actually patch it? It's not fair that it's a raid and you're not getting accountability for your kills on your trackers and all that stuff.
Right.
But at the same time, it's an old raid, and we know what people are using it for. It's not to get like pinnacles and stuff out of it.
Yeah, so, Bungie knows what people are doing, and
so
that's why it's like,
done it for one. Just do it for the other ones too.
Right.
All right. Well, that is about all we have today, folks. So thank you guys for hopping on and chatting with me as usual, and thank you, our wonderful audience, for listening. And stay tuned for our duality deep dive.
Yep.
See you guys soon.
Bye.
Ciao.
You can put this voice recording away and go on with your life, because you and I both know you'd have me yapping in your ear for the rest of your days.
Want to further the discussion? Get in touch with us at any of our Twitter handles, all of which can be found in our podcast description.